The Flashback mod is an amazing new mod, very similar to the replay mod. It allows you to basically record your experience and set up different camera paths and a whole bunch of different other things so you can make your perfect cinematic masterpiece. And today I'm going to be showing you everything you need to know about it and all the different things that you can do with it. So hit that subscribe button and let's get into it. So to get started, find your ideal location to record, and to start recording, you can go into here where it says Flashback, start recording, or you could type the command /flashback start, and then you'll see this toast right here in the top that says Flashback started recording. Now you can do some mining or some building, whole bunch of random different things. Now that you have finished recording, all you have to do is hit escape and hit finish recording, or you can do /flashback finish, but I'm going to do it this way. So finish recording, it'll say flashback finish recording. Give it a name that you'll remember it by. So I've named this file Fred. I'm gonna go ahead and save it. Now you can also decide to cancel the recording if you started recording and you didn't want to actually record, or pause recording, and then you can be doing a bunch of things, pause it, take a break and do something, and then come back later and it'll pick up like you never even left. So far it's been very similar to how replay mod works, but from here on out you'll start to notice how this mod is so much different and in a lot of ways so much better. Once you've got all of your recordings and stuff that you need, click Save and Quit to Title, and you'll be on the main menu. Now you'll see this button right here that says R. Now very similar to the replay mod, this is where your replays are stored. Click on this and find your replays. So here's Fred right here. I'm gonna click on him to play the replay. This is where it starts to get crazy. See, there is this whole thing right here, this whole menu. And the thing with Minecraft is just this small square right here. By default, all you're going to have is this mouse. You can move around with the regular movement, ASWD, shift, space, and all that. But in order to look around, you're going to have to hold down left click to get the cursor, and then while holding it down, only then can you look around. If at any time you want to full screen, or maybe have an easier time moving around, just hit the F1 key, or this button right at the top, and then hit F1 again to get back into the menu. And while you're holding left click, if you use the scroll wheel, you can increase the flight speed similar to spectator mode. So if you ever lose a player, hit the first hotbar slot key, hit it again, and hit it again to teleport to you. Or you can also use other numbers to teleport to other players. And now we've got movement covered. Over on the side, we can choose whether or not we can see different things like the chat. Over here, the boss bar like the Ender Dragon, the title text scoreboard, or action bars, stuff you'll find in mini games and such. By default, these are all off, and can't think of too many times where you're gonna need them, but they're there just in case you do. Next we have the world section where we can choose to render blocks or not. So if you for some reason don't want to have any blocks, you can go ahead and remove blocks. Decide whether or not you want entities on. There's none in this current view right now, so I promise it does something. You can choose to render players or not, render particles. At the bottom here you can turn off name tags, which is pretty nice. Probably the craziest thing in here is you can turn off the sky, and it becomes this whole green screen here. We basically got this full green screen automatically set up where we can do anything we like, really. Say you want to have sort of like a fog-year day to fit the mood of your scene. You can choose to override the fog. You can choose where it ends. So say I want it more in the back, I can have the end more over here. And maybe I don't want fog at all, I can move the start right at the end so there's just no fog there. Might be a fun idea to play around, see what you can come up with. For now I'm just going to leave it off. You can also override the field of view, the FOV, by default it's 70, but you can also zoom way into 1 to, oh dear, oh dear. Okay, don't put it at 1 or your game will crash. So you can change the FOV, you can make it higher, you can make it lower. Don't make it too low or it will crash, please. I'm not going to bring it lower than 30. You can also override the time. You don't like it being like right at sunset? Well, like you can just like move the sun. So yeah, got camera shake. You can choose how much it's shaken. Camera roll, in case you like this. Then there's also in others, we've got the rule of thirds, adds the rule of thirds overlay to your screen. The center guide to make sure something's centered. For example, the crosshair is not centered, just so you know. And also by default, we've got the camera path on. Down here, we've got the timeline. Now, we can't really do anything at the moment other than move the thing around, see what's going on here. So you can move this around as much as you want, but you're not going to make a video out of just that. To the bottom corner right here, we've got the add element button. Here we can choose to add an element where we can modify different things. We've got the camera orbit, field of view, speed, time lapse, time of day, and camera shake. I'm going to go over each one individually and show you an example of all of them being used once I'm done. So the first one is camera. Here, adding the plus, we can choose our first scene. Our video is now in a little green box. That's because, well, that's where the camera is. There's this little thing that shows you where the camera is facing. Now when we play it, we'll always just be facing this. By adding another point, we can add another keyframe. So say I want it here at the start, but by the time we get to 5.5 seconds, it's going to have moved over here. And we can visualize that by clicking play at the start. And I'll move from point A, this one over here, to point B. And once it gets to point B, it'll stay there unless there is a point C to move to. You'll also notice this little dotted line. And this actually represents the amount of time it takes to get from here to there. Every one of those dashes is a singular game tick. If we were to take this dot, point B, and move it over to, we'll arrive by 2 seconds, you'll see they're a lot longer because in one game tick, which there's 20 ticks in a second, we need to move the camera further to get to the desired path. So playing this, it'll be the exact same, but faster. Now if we want, we can go in, get to a new position, place down a point C. Playing this back, I'll have this little thing here, moving over here, and over the course of 5 seconds, we'll have gone through the full thing. Now what if I want to stay in this spot for a while, and then move after a few seconds? If I move to wherever I want, and place the new camera position where I want to be after that pause, this area here is not going to be pause. This area here is going to be transitioning from point C to point D. If you want to have a pause in there, make sure you're at the exact same spot you want to be paused at, and don't move. Now I'm here, I'm going to wait for however long I want it to be paused, and I'm going to pause it when I want the pause to be done. And when I want the camera to start moving again, I'm going to place another keyframe, and it's going to be the exact same. So when I play this through, there's going to be no movement. If I want to be up here now, after the pause, I can place my new keyframe, and now when we play that over again, we should have a nice pause, watch the guy start to do something, and then we should start moving right about here. Now that's the camera explained. You can also decide to disable the keyframe track, so if you want to have another track going, you can have all of these disabled so they don't actually do anything, and you can see what everything else does without these showing up. Or if you don't want any of these at all, hit the remove all keyframes and that'll just remove the track. The next element we've got is the camera orbit. Now if we add a keyframe here, you can customize these numbers, and it's a little tricky, but it does circles and stuff. That's what it does. If I move these all to 360, what would happen? So we get a little spiral effect there, and like now we get oh, yeah. Get that, yeah. Taking damage in the void. I guess we can still take damage as the renderer, but yeah, if you want to do full circles around the entire world, this is how you do it. Camera orbit is probably the most confusing thing on here, so we know that it makes these circles and stuff. My suggestion is to just play around with it and see what it does. Like the camera, in order for it to actually move anywhere, you need a point A and a point B for it to move between. What? So don't go too far, because apparently you can actually die as the replay viewer, so that's probably one of the flaws of this mod. After that, we have FOV. So we can add our first keyframe at the normal FOV, but over here at, say, the first 4 seconds, we're going to have it really zoomed in at 30. So what this is going to do is increase the field of view, make it look like we're zooming in to 30. Now what we can also do is we can have the camera going at the same time, and then what we can do is sort of move backwards at another keyframe, and then if we do it right, we should get this thing where it sort of flattens it out. I'm pretty sure you can also do like the reverse, say like you zoom in. Oh, that actually looks really cool. If you're wondering why the FOV keyframe's in there, that's why. After FOV, we've got speed. So say at 8 seconds, we want to speed it up. So we're gonna start it just to be safe so we don't mess anything up. This program's still a little buggy. So what we're gonna do is at the very front, if we want it to just be normal speed, then we want to place a keyframe that says it's normal speed at the very front. And then when we want to speed it up, say at like 8 seconds, then we add another keyframe and increase the speed with this slider. You can only go up to 10 times speed. I'm just going to move it to 5 times speed, which should be a good amount. Hit add. Now you're going to have a quick burst as this line here is hovering over the circle, but as soon as it's off the circle, you're going to be back at normal speed again. So if you want to keep that speed, make a new keyframe, put it to the speed you want, and now you should have it be the normal speed when you start, but then for that full time, you'll have it to that 5 times speed. So I want to move it farther. I can have it be 5 times speed this whole time, and then once it gets to the 40-second mark, then it gets going. One thing that might be important to note is that when it says, say, 40 seconds or 10 seconds or whatever, it's in the recording time, not the replay time. So since we've got this sped up, it's not going to take 40 seconds to get to the 40-second mark. It's only going to take, say, 8 seconds if I'm doing my math right. I'm probably not. That's all you need to know about speed. The next element you can add is the time-lapse. So for time-lapse, what you do is find the spot where you want to start. So I want to start my time-lapse here. We're going to place a keyframe. The first one should say 1 second. Anything else that doesn't really make sense, the first keyframe will say 1 second. We're going to click add, and we're going to have the keyframe there. Navigate to the end of what you want to do the time-lapse of. After this point, the time-lapse will stop. Add a keyframe, and we're going to specify how long we want this time-lapse to take. So if we say 10 seconds, then the total time-lapse duration will last 10 seconds. A very important thing to note with the time-lapse markers is that the amount of time it takes has got to be greater than the previous marker. This marker over here cannot be 8, while this is 7. Or say we want to add a new marker, so say we want to continue the time-lapse, but make it a little bit slower. We got this thing over here, and we want to have the time-lapse, but make it only 2 seconds. Well, it won't work, because this is a smaller amount of time than this. So if we want to make this last 2 seconds, whatever time this was, so for us 10, we're gonna pop it onto here, so now it's 12 seconds. If you're very confused about something, tell me about it down in the comments and I can help you out with that. But now with this whole time lapse, this should take 10 seconds, and this next part should take 2. And that's time lapse. Next event is time of day. So I want the current time of day to be how it starts, and I'm going to make it so that there's another keyframe with the current time of day over here. So for the first 8 seconds, the time of day does not change. I want it to have transitioned to night between 8 and 12 seconds. So I'm going to add a new keyframe, move the time of day to night. The larger the number, the later in the day it is, to the point where here we're coming in at the end of the day, and this is the start of the day. So I'm going to put it as almost a full cycle of the sun. Starting it out, it's going to start moving right like that. And the very last thing in here, we've got camera shake. So when you want to add a little camera shake effect, find where you want the camera shake to start. So I'm going to put it here at 11 seconds. I'm going to add a keyframe here. Gonna put it at 0 so that this whole time there isn't any moving of the camera until we get to here. Now I'll place another keyframe shortly after where I make the camera actually shake. Frequency controls how fast it shakes, and amplitude is how large of a shake it is. So I'm gonna move this to 3 for each of these, and so when I get here, it's going to start shaking a little bit until I decide to stop it. So I'm going to stop it here. I'm going to put these back to 0. And one issue with this is that once it starts shaking, kinda doesn't stop. So when you go back to the beginning, it starts shaking yet again. So gonna need to add a new keyframe, put it to 0, and pop it right there. And then there should be no shaking throughout the entire recording. Now once we get to the 11-second mark right here, it's going to start shaking. Right here, it's going to stop shaking or slow down and no more shaking. And if you're wondering what this blue slider thing is, I haven't seen it do anything. So if someone knows what this little slider thing here does, please let everyone know in the comments. Now I'm going to show you what a completed thing looks like. I've got just about all the paths done. So I've got my first keyframe down here with the pumpkins, and I've got the time of day set to day and the camera shake to off right now. And then I'll be moving over here. And then right about here, the camera is going to start shaking. It's going to turn night in a really cool transition. The speed slows down as I zoom in with the FOV changes, which looks actually pretty cool. Then it's going to get back to the normal speed right about here. But yeah, that's what a somewhat completed thing looks like, with all the little different things going on all at the same time. Now the very last thing is how to export it. Now there's this button right here, right next to the hide button, that says export. This is how you export it. Now there's this thing that pops up here that says export to video. You can pick your resolution, your start and end tick, your frame rate, and a reset RNG button, which as it says, tries to remove randomness from the replay. This is just a recreation of what happened. It's not a full recording. So my suggestion, unless you know what you're doing, I wouldn't touch these. Next is the video options. We get to choose, like, can export it as MP4, MKV, AVI, and MOV. There's some other things in here which I'm not going to mess with. And then there's also the option to record audio, which will basically have audio in your video. I'm just going to set this to MP3. Then we can either set this to export or add this to the queue. So maybe if you're wanting to export something very long and you don't want to sit and wait around while it's exporting, you want to get working on the next thing, you can add this to queue. And then you can export multiple things so that there's sort of like a line, is my understanding. But I'm just going to click Start Export. It's going to ask you where you want to put it as and what you want the name to be. So I'm just going to name this file and save the file. We can go on into our downloads. It's finished downloading. And once it's done downloading, it should show us what we saw. So yeah, so this is Yeah, so this is the final product, and yeah, it's kind of cool. So just with some playing around, you can get some really cool results. It does work perfectly fine on servers, so you won't need to worry about that. You can still do the command and everything, and it works perfectly fine. You don't need to have commands enabled or any of that. It's all client side, so you shouldn't have any problems there. But anyway, that's the end of this video. If you liked it, make sure to subscribe. If you don't understand or need help with anything, just pop that down in the comments, and feel free to correct me if I got anything wrong and you know more than me. I do welcome that. Make sure to subscribe so you can see more videos like this, and I shall see you in the next one.